All that matters from the perspective of today is that I'm a threatened species ecologist. I work for the state agency currently called Department of Planning and Environment. And probably more importantly, as to why I'm here, is within this state, within New South Wales, we assign species, threatened species, to particular individuals. And so I'm responsible, if you can call it that, for all of the large forest owls in the state. So all of the ones you just saw, plus sooty owl in also. But my real role today is simply to set perspectives, set the stage using perspectives that will allow you to perhaps understand the more quantified and interesting talks coming. What I'll start with is the star of today. Now, masked owls and parafals, they're fine, but barking owl is the star of the program. And barking owls are, most of you know, but allow me to continue just for those who don't. Barking owls are about that big. Now that puts them halfway in between boobuks and powerful owls. From a dietary perspective, that means that they can take everything that a boobook does, pretty much, and they can take most of what a powerful owl does, pretty much. So ringtails, for instance, perfectly good. Sugar gliders, squirrel gliders that a powerful owl regularly eats, a barking owl can take quite easily. Phascogales, again, powerfuls take them. It causes me great pain because I did my PhD on phascogales, but you know, that's the way it goes, that's life. Barking owls, quite commonly. What that means is that barking owls are in a sweet spot. Technically, they should be in exactly the role in this environment that they are survivors because they can take so much of the different kinds of food. Barking owls are also in a sense in a sweet spot because they have become flagship species across most of their habitat. People love them. They are unique in that most of you know the powerful owl call is a deep woo woo. Barking owls have that beautiful It always amuses me that dogs fall for it all the time. Barking owls never fall for a dog barking. Completely irrelevant. But more importantly, we're talking about a flagship species that is so important to everyone that it actually has wine named after it. So this is barking owl Shiraz. If you can find any other threatened species with a wine named after it, I want to know. Okay, so I've told you it's in a sweet spot, dietary-wise, but it's also in a, well, sweet spot isn't the proper term. It's very open-minded when it comes to habitat use and is spread across the continent in lots and lots of different habitats. That should, in theory, mean that it is a survivor. Amongst all the large forest owls in particular, you would say, in theory, barking owls are the most likely to be resilient. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Ignoring for the moment the tropics, where there's a different subspecies of barking owl, in the southern part of Australia, barking owls have effectively disappeared from Western Australia. They finally, just a few months ago, admitted that it is functionally extinct there after claiming that they had it for years. It is effectively extinct from South Australia. There's about 40 or maybe 60 birds left in Victoria. And in New South Wales, we've lost most of our population. Now, let me put that in perspective. I did calculations a while ago, and pre-European arrival, there were probably about 20,000 barking owls in New South Wales alone. Currently, we would be lucky to have 2,000. The figure is more likely 1,000. That's huge, absolutely huge. And so we're dealing with something that is on the edge. It is listed as vulnerable. It may be a lot more endangered than, a lot more threatened than that. You would think, therefore, that a lot of survey would have been put into this species. It's not the case. Most of the owl survey in New South Wales has been, to be honest, limited and relatively haphazard. As an example, about 20 years ago, a biodiversity assessment was being done in what's called the Brigalow Belt South, just consider dry woodland as the general concept there. A lot of money was being put into it at the time, $1 million, which at the time was quite a bit. The style of the survey was so limited, I'll use that term, that they weren't going to be able to get an answer out of that biodiversity assessment that actually would help the overall project. So what, fortunately, we were in a position to do was Dave Millage was available at the time and had the dedication to do the proper kind of survey throughout that area that showed us what was going on in the Brigalow Belt, or at least a portion of the Brigalow Belt South. Now, not to be immodest, but the survey that we did was the best owl survey ever in Australia up to that point. And the important aspect of that is we discovered the largest barking owl population in all of southern Australia, focused right on the Pilliga. No one knew this until about 2002. It was really quite shocking to be able to walk into a meeting where they were discussing tenure change from state forest into national park based upon the notion of important conservation areas and say, you do realize you have the largest barking owl population still extant right here. And it made a huge difference to the negotiations that were going on. What has happened since then is that Dave rightfully pointed out after that we need to look at this area up here, that if there's a second core population, it's here. And sure enough, Dave's work over a period after that identified different places that we needed to look at more closely and set the stage for what you are going to hear today, which is, to be honest, the major work going on large forest owls in New South Wales at the moment. Don't get me wrong, there's others, but in general, we have been complacent, shall I say, up until 2020. People were saying for a long time, most of the large forest owls, not barking owls, were not secure, but relatively stable. They weren't high on our list. The fires changed all that. So we're in a position now where we're backpedaling. We will be quickly trying to assess where populations are across the, mostly eastern New South Wales, and then highlighting those areas, 100 in particular, for on-ground management in order to try to improve habitat quality and get these populations recovering, not just from a localized perspective, but from a meta-population perspective. Owls do not work in isolation. You need to have a large number of pairs spread across a large area, which is why a group like this is so important. You represent an enormous amount of area and an enormous amount of interest. So with that in mind, I'll hand over to Dave